I think for me it was just like this drive of not, I wasn't going to stop until I found the answers. And I've had a lot of mentors tell me it's not about the answers, it's about the questions you ask. And so I'm always been the type of person that's like, why is this? Why is that? Like, let me figure it out. Let's try to go deeper. And it's, when you're dealing with like a chronic illness in the way that I was, it's very easy for us to hand our power over to the person in the white coat and say, you need to fix me. But that person's not there to fix you. They're a guide for you. But you're the person that needs to fix yourself. And that's kind of like something that I think I got this, from playing sports, getting cut from like the A team as a kid or whatever. And just like, I need to just, bust my butt and practice harder and just really get into it, and then I would get what I wanted.
Welcome to the show. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I got our guest here, Ryan Syverson. Am I saying that right?
Syverson?
Syverson. Ryan Syverson. And he's going to talk about his story today. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate you having me on, man. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us the definition of what high performance is to you.
High
How does
performance,
that start off?
yeah.
What do you think it is?
High performance to me would be just the ability to handle a lot of stress and be very resilient. Kind of covering things like finance, fitness, family, friends, spirituality, kind of covering all those aspects. A lot of times we think high performer is somebody that's just successful and makes a lot of money, and that can be great, but that person's health could be failing and they could be dealing with a lot of other issues. Whereas if you can kind of be more rounded in a high performance aspect, you're taking care of your fitness, you're taking care of your diet, you're taking care of your family, kids if you have them, and things like that. You are able to function at a much higher level, dialing in your sleep. And then obviously the business aspects and, being of service and helping other people. And then the not the repercussions, but the receiving end of that would be just, living a life of more freedom and purpose and impact.
Love that. Love that. So what do you tell the audience here, what you do, Ryan? Like, give us some clarity around like what you're doing right now, how you're helping people. Like, dive into some more of what you're doing right now.
Okay, sure. So I'm a functional health consultant. I work with a lot of people dealing with more kind of complex chronic illnesses, autoimmunity, things like Lyme disease, mold illness, and fibromyalgia that nobody else has really been able to help with. I got into that, I've been doing that for like 7 years now, but I have my own story and we can kind of get into that later. But yeah, I work with people through like one-on-one services, programs, group things, and just help them up-level their health. These people have been in the medical system some of them for 20 years and just haven't been able to get help. They've been on and off medications, seen many different practitioners. I've worked with some clients that have worked with some of the top functional medicine practitioners in the U.S., but they weren't quite able to get that high touch support to really work them through the different aspects of health and wellness. And I look at health and wellness from our three bodies: our spiritual body, our psychological body, and our physical body. And most people that come to me have been working on the physical body for years, but they just don't have those other aspects covered, and they're leaving a lot of it's like the cork in the bottle of wine. The wine can't be poured if that cork's there. And so we start to help them with the spiritual aspect and their mental emotional aspect, and that kind of unpops the cork, and all the hard work they've been doing finally starts to work.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad you're looking at those areas, because that was going to be my follow-up question about understanding some of that. But how did you start doing all of this? Because you've been doing this for years now. Mm-hmm. Like, where was this big shift from you way back when you were starting, different things and figuring out these solutions here? Like, where did that all start at?
So I've always been interested in like the human body and like just personal development, always trying to up-level it. So I grew up an athlete since I was a little kid. Grew up in Minnesota, played a lot of ice hockey. That was my game or my sport. but played baseball, golf, and football as well for a while. And just coming out of high school, I kind of started hanging out with the wrong crowd and got in a lot of trouble. Ended up joining the Marine Corps, so developed a lot of habits that kind of like woke me up real quick, and just continued working in just being on top of personal fitness. Power lifted for a while, got out of the Marine Corps, joined and started working for AT&T, and just playing like competitive men's league ice hockey. Continued to work out. Ended up getting a personal training certificate, and was doing that on the side. So personal training, and I wanted to move out of telecommunications and become a personal trainer, physical therapist, because I was having a lot of my own injuries that I was dealing with. I had back surgery, knee surgery, hernia surgery. And then one day, it felt like one day, but I was slowly starting to create more health problems that just didn't make any sense. I ended up straining a pec muscle that put me out, and I wasn't able to work out for about 2 months. And it just seemed like other injuries, a lot of fatigue, like insomnia, and a lot of stress going on at that time. And then one day I woke up right around my 35th birthday, and I felt like I was a 90-year-old man. It literally took me like 90 minutes to put on my pants and get out of bed. I felt like the Tin Man, like my back hurt so bad. My muscles were like locking up. I had like neurological twitches, couldn't figure out what was going on. And that just kind of was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, I'm all right. Like, this is something that I need to figure out. And I had started going to see doctors, saw my family practitioner, didn't really have any answers for me. All my blood work came back fine. Saw a rheumatologist, gastroenterologist, neurologist, and nobody could really figure out what was going on with me. They said, I was overly stressed. I needed to sleep, but I was only getting about 3 hours of sleep at that time. I would be lucky if I could fall asleep at like 3 a.m. and I'd have to wake up at 6 to go to work. And I just was at a loss. I couldn't figure it out. I started getting into alternative medicine and really dialing into meditation, and that was really beneficial. And then I got into functional medicine and the paleo diet and ancestral diet, and started to cut out, being a personal trainer, I thought I knew everything about diet, but it's like, I was eating a lot of grains, a lot of dairy, and these things just ended up being really toxic for me. So I made these changes, diet-wise and some other things, and that helped reduce some of the inflammation, but it didn't explain a lot of the other things. And I've been gaslighted by a lot of the doctors, and it wasn't until Thanksgiving, like about a year and a half into it, where I was home in Minnesota for Thanksgiving because I was living in Chicago at the time. And I'll never forget the phone call I got from the environmental inspector, because I thought there was mold going on. Before that, I went to one of the top hospitals in Chicago to integrative medicine, and brought a book there called Surviving Mold. And I said, I think mold is what's causing this. And they were like, no, absolutely not. You have fibromyalgia. That's what's going on with you. And I was like, I'm not going to accept that answer. I'm going to figure it out on my own. And so when I was home, this environmental inspector was like the first person that validated me and made me feel heard. He called me on Thanksgiving Day, and he's like, are you in your home right now? I said, no, I'm home with my family in Minnesota. He's like, good, don't go back to your home. And I'm like, what? He's like, the mold levels in your condo are like off the charts. Like that's why you're sick.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was like a big aha. And so I had to go back to Chicago and try to take care of things and try to get remediation done.
So was it just an old building or something?
No, it was a brand new condo. I was the first person to live in it. And
then how in the world did you think that there was mold?
Well, this was back so I bought in 2004. So this was kind of like during the housing boom. And in Chicago, there was contractors just throwing up these 3 flats like in no time, and things weren't up to code, and nobody told us. So the exterior of our building was, it's called split face block. So it's like cinder block, but if you don't seal it, it's like concrete or cinder block's very porous. and so it just sucks the moisture in. And we never was told we had to seal the building. And when they did the remediation, I mean, I had black mold in my ceilings, under my hardwood floors, behind my, like where my bed was on the back side of the drywall. You couldn't see anything, but it was everywhere. And so they started to remediate, and they were like 2 weeks into it. And they said, we can't go any further because the unit below you is full of mold, and there's nobody living there because it had been foreclosed on by the bank, because that gentleman actually had died of a heart attack. And so it was just like a really bad situation. And it was at that point I was like, all right, I mean, I'm not going to pay to get that unit fixed. And so I just ended up having to walk away from my condo, go into foreclosure. And long story short, I ended up having to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy because I was also into real estate at the time as well. I had like 4 properties, and so my health was failing, my finances, but I chose my health over my credit score. And that was the beginning of a long journey to gain my health back. And so from there, I got out of my house, started feeling a little bit better, and then a new wave of symptoms came on. So I spent another year looking to see what was going on, and eventually it was like my 13th doctor ended up diagnosing me with Lyme disease. And so then I spent the next 5 years, beating the mold illness, overcoming the Lyme, meeting with other functional medicine practitioners who were mentors for me, and just diving into the research, reading every book and everything I could possibly think of. And in that process, people started to reach out to me, asking me for help. And I just started helping them, like, hey, try this diet, do this. These supplements are good for that. And long story short, I really discovered what I was good at and what I really liked to do. And so I ended up getting certified in functional diagnostic nutrition, and then started working with clients doing that.
Amazing. That's so cool, dude. I mean, you're helping people from all the craziness that you've gone through, which is not normal. And so many people live with pain and stress and issues, and and they just don't know how to deal with it, because sometimes the medicine doesn't really kind of help. It just kind of numbs the pain, and we have so many people addicted to stuff, and they don't know what's happened and shifted. And so it's cool that you're around kind of helping people practically sort through some key areas of their life. Like that's wild. That's wild. How many years was that in the making of everything?
So my symptoms started in 2010. I finally went into full remission in 2017, and I've been in remission ever since. I continue to try to up-level my health, always looking for better ways to help clients. With getting that remission, discovering Lyme disease, like I mentioned earlier about the 3 bodies, our spiritual, psychological, and physical body. Well, being an athlete and somebody that's super into like working out and like high performance on a physical level, that's where I was focusing all my attention. And probably like 5 years into my journey, like I just couldn't get any further. I was stuck at like 70% and nothing was moving, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it hit me when I was in my living room. It was like a sunny afternoon in the probably late summer, and I wanted to go. We had a super nice park down the street from me, and I wanted to go to the park and just kind of hang out. And I just didn't have the energy to do it, and so I just sat down, kind of a little bummed out, and grabbed my book on Lyme disease and opened up to chapter 8, and was talking about trauma and emotional issues, and it just like hit me like a punch in the face. I was like, oh my God, like all this stuff that I've been doing, I've been missing this huge component. And earlier when I started meditating, I had this very like out of body experience, and images came up to me, and I couldn't figure out where they came from. This is somebody I hadn't seen or thought about since I was like 5 years old, and I just kind of swept it back under the rug. But this was somebody that because I was sexually abused at that time, and I had repressed all that information, and I didn't want to look at it. And so in that time, sitting in my living room reading that book, I was like, could this be what's holding me back? And so then I started diving into nervous system work, trauma, personal development and really kind of diving into that aspect. And once I started working through some of that stuff, that was like taking the parking brake off. And then literally within 4 months or so, like I went from like 70% functionality to like 85, 90. And then it was
Wow.
just kind of sped up from there. And I was like, wow, this is a huge piece that I need to share with people. And also in that process, it reconnected me with God and spiritual aspects that I always considered myself a spiritual person, but not religious. And that learning to surrender, accept, and let go and let God, so to speak, was really a game changer for me.
I love that, man. It's like you have to go through process in your life to really kind of calibrate and connect to those dots, because otherwise people just hold things in, or they're not really aware of things that they should be, actually getting to and journal and process through. And people don't know how to cope with that, and it messes up their life because they never sit to deal with those sort of things. I remember for me, I was like 17 or 18, and I was surfing in San Diego, Point Loma, and it was during a sunset that was absolutely amazing. It was like the golden cliffs, and you had dolphins popping up, and you're just like, there has to be a maker in all of this. Like, and there was some spiritual realization that there's a God out there, and I got to get to know him. And it was very helpful for me to really put these things together, because I grew up in a Christian home. So, oftentimes you have these, generational relationships with God, which isn't really a real relationship at all. It's, it becomes that religion, which is oftentimes people just end up resenting or hating. And it became really real to me when I really started getting through, and processing through and journaling and realization. I mean, I even went and traveled Europe and lived in Israel for a while because I just knew I needed to figure this out, and so I love the hunt. I love the vision that you had, because not everybody deals with that. And I think there's an element that people really need to awaken and realize, hey, I got to figure these things out, because this is not necessarily normal, or even if you do accept it as normal, you got to like break through somehow. And sometimes you have to get your help, like yourself, or from someone like yourself to really kind of get through that process of stuff. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's
go
ahead. Sorry.
I want you to carry on that, because I want to shift gears in a second.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, because you mentioned, asking for help. And I think as humans, sometimes that can be the hardest thing for us to do. That was a really big thing for me. Like, I felt I had to do everything on my own. And, asking God for help, asking other people for help has been difficult for me throughout most of my life. I did have mentors, and I love that you're a seeker and kind of, looking for things. Because, I believe that, our soul's here for a purpose. And for me, getting sick, as awful as that was part of my journey, and it helped me find my purpose. And honestly, it was the greatest gift that could have ever happened to me. And I know a lot of other people that have gone through a situation like that feel the same way.
Yeah, they become victims of their past or their situations, rather than finding, like you did, the spark and passion and the gold from the tragedies into something that now is helping so many people. And most of the time people don't level up. They just live and roll over, and it's a really sad existence. And this is where you're trying to take these challenges and trauma and past situations and remedy that by helping others. How important was that for you? I know we have like the key instinct for, wealth and, trying to have strong relationships, but it's oftentimes internal. Where was that big shift for you to kind of like look at, how do I help others with what I do know now? And what was kind of that parallel that you had to come to grips with of realizing, hey, I got to do it? And before you answer it, I had to come to that grips because I realized that all the great people that we recognize and that we appreciate in our life or in our world and our generations or legacy, like you got, Jesus, you got, people look up at Gandhi or Mother Teresa. If you look at all the parallels, or even like people look up to their parents, like maybe their mom or their dad that sacrificed a lot, it was because they did a lot of amazing things for others and not for themselves.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like, what did Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Jesus have at the end of their life? Nothing, right? It's because they were all in the pursuit of others. And the things that we even respect about our parents sometimes was the great sacrifices and lengths that they had to go through, sometimes depending on everybody's circumstance. But oftentimes people look up to, one of their, people in their life that were really critical in their sacrifice that they gave to help someone else,
Yeah.
How did that become a parallel for you in all of this too?
Man, I'm trying to think of like when I actually had I think I've always liked helping people. I get really jazzed up about stuff. I geek out about health and like physiology and psychology, neurology, and like I mentioned earlier, I was dealing with a lot of sports injuries, orthopedic injuries. So even while I was working at AT&T, like people at work would get hurt, and I would be like, "Hey, man, you should check this out and do this and do that." And for me, it was kind of just born in me. Like I really like to help people, and like I like to share my knowledge with others, and like, "Hey, this worked for me. Maybe try that." And it makes me think of the Zig Ziglar quote where he said, "You can have everything in your life if you want, as long as you help somebody else get what they want." Paraphrasing there, but and I think that's really what it's all about. And the more we give, the more we can receive, and it just opens us up to that. And I was actually having this conversation with my wife last week, I think, because early on when I started my business, my thing was like, I just want to be a millionaire and have all this money and have all these material things. But through the process of like doing this and helping more people, especially as I just continue to nurture my spiritual connection with God and Jesus, and just the fact that being able to help others, and it's like like a feeling inside. Like I don't need something material to define me or to make me feel good about myself. And I think that's one thing I would like to tell people is that everything you need, you already have. And it's about going inside, making connection to whatever higher source that might be for you. For somebody, it could be either the universe or whatever that may be. But turning inwards and answering those questions and not being afraid to look at those dark parts of ourselves, and that's I don't know if I really answered your question, but
sure. Let me ask you about your the things that you had to create, the disciplines, the resolutions you had to make, the journaling moments, the waking up early, the books you had to read. Like, help us understand that journey of the edge that you had to have, or the things that you've had to implement to become the person you are now.
I think for me it was just like this drive of not, I wasn't going to stop until I found the answers. And I've had a lot of mentors tell me it's not about the answers, it's about the questions you ask. And so I'm always been the type of person that's like, why is this? Why is that? Like, let me figure it out. Let's try to go deeper. And it's, when you're dealing with like a chronic illness in the way that I was, it's very easy for us to hand our power over to the person in the white coat and say, you need to fix me. But that person's not there to fix you. They're a guide for you, but you're the person that needs to fix yourself. And that's kind of like something that I think I got this, from playing sports, getting cut from like the A team as a kid or whatever, and just like I need to just bust my butt and practice harder and just really get into it, and then I would get what I wanted. And so I was able to do that, or I'd make the A team. I was able to apply those aspects from playing sports to my own health. And for me, and sometimes this is a disconnect I have with people that I work with, because I find working with like athletes and other like high performers, it's really easy. You can kind of lay things out and they're going to do it. Whereas other people, you almost have to, I don't know if it's convince them, but you need to help them convince themselves into doing it. Just like sales, you're helping them do something that's going to be for their betterment. And for as far as is like the discipline aspect, that I just geeked out on that stuff, and I really enjoy doing that. So it wasn't really for me, that part wasn't hard. The hard part was the second aspect that you mentioned about doing the journaling and going inward. That was the hard part. Because I didn't want to look at those aspects of myself. I didn't particularly like myself. I wasn't the happiest person all the time. And, prior to me getting sick too, I was abusing drugs and alcohol for a long time, which kind of like, it was me masking that pain inside. And a lot of times we will search outside of us, being the gym or athletics or material possessions, to try to fill a void within us. And for me, I had a moment, like an aha moment, where this is the first time I didn't feel alone. I was in my living room, and I felt like the presence of God, like of Jesus, and I broke down my wife, and I said, for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone. Because I could be even when I was around my wife or my friends or my family, I felt alone. But when I made that connection, it was like, man, I can't even describe how powerful that was. So yeah. I know it's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question there.
That's good. That's good, man. What about what's your everyday carry? I know for me, I have like my phone. I got my keys to the car, or I have a pen. Because I always want to help people.
Yeah.
When everybody's looking for a pen. Like what are those everyday things that you carry around for yourself?
Man, I would say, fortunately, my phone is always there. I'm always usually listening to podcasts or some audiobook. Pens. When I did Bob Proctor, I did his coaching program, like probably, man, I'm trying to think, back in 2015, something like that, 2016. And he had always said that like great thoughts can slip away like a slippery fish if you don't have a pencil to jab it and write it down. So always having something to either take notes. So like I used to carry a pen and like a small notebook with me. Now I just do a lot of voice memos on my phone because it's just easier. I always have a book with me. I'm always ready to read. That was another thing one of my mentors taught me. Like if you're ever going anywhere, I always have a book because you never know if you're going to have to wait. So I'll have a book with me at all times. Some water. Those are probably the big things I'm always carrying with me.
That's awesome, man. Well, give us some last thoughts here as we're wrapping up our conversation here together. What are some things that the audience should know that you would think would be really important for them to know within this conversation here?
Yeah, I think it's tune into your intuition, and don't deny that. I think a lot of times in our society we have been taught to disregard our intuition and not listen to it. And I've learned the hard way that when I don't listen to it, I get in trouble. Stop looking for answers outside of you. They're inside of you. Just go inward. Trust yourself. Find mentors. And when it comes to like health and wellness, I mean, the simplest and easiest thing is the closer you come and get back in touch with nature and the way that God created us, like getting in touch with nature, being outside, seeing the sunrise every morning, supporting your health in that aspect. When you bring yourself back to nature, nature takes care of you, God takes care of you, and you're going to bring yourself back to wellness. That's a big thing that I was always looking for, supplements or something like that, a quick biohack. But your best biohack is sleep, healthy diet, getting outside and seeing the sun, having a healthy boundaries with tech, because tech can definitely overwhelm us. And just trust your instincts and find mentors where you can, and always be looking to learn.
I love that, man. Well, I'll put all the links down below here, but how can everybody follow you and connect with you further?
Sure. So the best place to follow me would be on Instagram. I'm at Ryan _Syverson. So that's RYAN _SY, V as in Victor, ERSON. My website is Your Sublime Life, which is YOURSUBLYMELIFE.com. You can find me on Facebook, but the best place to find me is on Instagram.
Perfect. I'll list all those things down below. Great having you on the show today, Ryan, and hearing your story and how you're helping people. So glad that we were on this conversation together today.
Thank you,
Until
Nathan.
next time.
I appreciate it, man.